Good morning, evening, or afternoon, whichever one applies to you at this current point in time. Today we're going to be changing the Serpentine belt or the driver belt on a 2009 Honda Civic Hybrid. And first and foremost, we're going to need a replacement belt, so I will leave a link in the description for the Dayco belt that I used. Otherwise, use whatever is available and compatible at your local parts shop. That being said, it is an air mid-core belt, so it should help with not only noise, but also any pulley misalignment or any pulley issues. Now, before we actually get into it, we do need to know what tools we're going to be using. So first, we are going to need a 19mm regular wrench. Do not use a ratcheting wrench. Use a, once again, regular wrench. You could use an adjustable wrench or a pair of pliers or whatever you want, but that seems to be the best way to not only get a good grip, but also get enough leverage depending on how long your wrench is. Second, I was looking at the only video on YouTube that pretty much does a good job of explaining how this is done, and it wasn't really clear visually because, again, Honda gives you, an inch barely of space just to get the belt down. So let's do it the easy way. I was looking through his comment section, and I saw somebody that said it took them like 4 hours, and they said that they finally took off the passenger tire. So that's what I did, and it was definitely a game changer. I don't like to do things the hard way, so take off the passenger tire. You can either use an impact wrench if you got one, or you can go old school, have the star, the four-sided, different size stuff if you got the strength for it. You can grab a breaker bar or a torque wrench or whatever you happen to have. Don't feel like you need to spend $1 million to get this job done. In order for you to do that, it's not just taking off the tire, but it's also removing the shields that cover the pulleys. I used the harder way just to make it more relatable to you. You will need 2 flathead screwdrivers, and you can pop those clips off carefully so you don't break them. If you have extra money, or if you happen to have them in your arsenal already, you could use these fender clip remover tools where you just pry up on them. They'll come in a set. In case you don't have photogenic memory, or you didn't take a video or a photo of how it's routed, I'm going to show you how that belt is supposed to be positioned, and then we can get into it. Unfortunately, I did lose my audio for the actual fix, so I'll just try to narrate some of it using voice. And last thing before we get to the actual fix is I made some notes, because you might not even know whether or not you need to change your belt, and that's something that you don't really have to do like spark plugs every few years or so. You do it, some people have the same belt from 10, 20 years ago when they first manufactured the car, and they're still going strong. It depends on the temperature, it depends on how hard you drive, it depends on accidents, it depends on so many different things, even moisture. Typically, you're never going to know that your belt is bad. There's 3 ways you're going to be able to assess whether or not it needs to be changed. First and foremost, you turn that car on one day, you're going to hear it. You're going to hear a chirp, you're going to hear a squeak. It can be just on startup, it can be intermittent, which means it'll chirp or squeak, then stop for a little bit, then it'll go, then it'll come back, and that's intermittent. Or it could just be you turn on the car and it's just there. You have to drive around with this annoying squeak, and that's just all there is to it. Those are 3 reasons that you should change your belt. A quiet belt is a happy belt. Now, sometimes if you turn on your car and it squeaks for a little bit and then it goes away, it could be on those winter mornings or a morning right after a really heavy rain where there's a lot of moisture. Some of the moisture might get in between the belt and the pulley, and as it's spinning, it just kind of throws that moisture off. If that's the case, assess your belt. You might not need to change it. It might just be some moisture that built up. Second, you might turn on your car and after a few seconds, you might see a little bit of smoke coming out from under the hood, or you might smell a little bit of burning rubber either in the cabin, or if you have the window down, you might smell from the outside some burning rubber, but you haven't moved the car yet, so it can't possibly be your tires. Go ahead and check that belt. And thirdly, you are going to have a visual assessment of that belt. You're going to touch it. Does it look wobbly? Does it jitter when the car is running? Those things you need to be on the lookout for. From a physical aspect, you need to see whether or not it has cracks, any ribs missing, if there's a glazing or some type of hollowing look to it. If it's dirty, it can also have a brownish glaze to it. It's time to go. So if you notice that it's making a lot of noise, if you notice that there is damage or cracks or any kind of glazing to the belt, or if you smell any kind of burning or smoke, it's signs of wear. If you check the edges, it could be that the pulley is causing a beveled edge by irritating the belt. So let's get on to the diagram. I'm going to draw it up really quick just so you have a good frame of reference for how this belt's going to go on. So let's keep this super simple. This is the tensioner, that's the AC compressor, that's the water pump, and this is the crankshaft. You're going to feed the belt across the entire thing. Once it's around completely, you are going to feed first the crankshaft, go over the water pump. Remember that the water pump is not going to have any grooves, so it's going to be the back side of the belt against that flat pulley, and then it's going to go down over the AC, and then, and only then, when these three are situated, are you going to pull that tensioner and finally get that belt over the tensioner pulley. Sound easy? It should be. Super simple. Now before you go pulling that tire off, make sure you let the owner know you're going to, so in case there's a special lug or a special key to take their tires off, that you're not running around hunting for it. Luckily hers was in the trunk. When you look at the bottom pulleys, the left one being the bigger one, that's the crankshaft, you want to get the belt above the water pump before you go securing it around the AC. Trust me, I did it a couple times and it just kept slipping off. So get that tension above, and then you can continue around the AC and follow it up to the tensioner. Again, easier said than done, but remember you can work from the bottom and the top. So from the bottom, get the crankshaft and water pump done. Then from the top, you can always pull down a pry bar or a long extension or something to get it lined up over the AC compressor fully, and then back up. Given that a lot of manufacturers use one side for all their bolts, including where you're supposed to adjust the tension, don't fall for the temptation. Use the hex lug that is provided on the right side of the pulley. That's where you're going to be getting that good leverage, as well as increasing the longevity of the pulley. Now, if you know 100% that your belt is worn out, gone, broken, etc., then you can just grab some shears and cut it off. Otherwise, if it happens to be okay, it's just worn out, then you can use it in an emergency. So I did keep this one as a backup for the owner. I let her know that I left it in the trunk. This is the time to take some pride in your work, so you're going to check around the area. Check for any hoses that might have come loose. Check for any connectors that you might have knocked out of place. You want to make sure that whether this is your car or someone else's, that you keep it safe. If it's for someone else, they'll definitely call you back. And if it's for you, you'll know that you and your family are safe. Let the car run for a while just to make sure those grooves and ribs have acquainted themselves. And if everything's looking good, put those shields back in. Get that tire back on, make sure you tighten it down to spec, and you're on your way. And that's it for now, so until next time, work smart.